Now, we had some news break, big news, and I can't wait to talk to you about this, Jimmy, specifically. AEW's Kyle O'Reilly was asked about his Canadian Mount Rushmore, and he said, quote, man, you don't want to leave anyone out.
I guess I'll say Brett, Owen, Adam Copeland, Chris Jericho.
I'd put Christian Cage on there as well if we could have 5. You can't have 5. That's the rules. Jimmy, right. As Canada's official representative, did Kyle O'Reilly get it right?
Well, first of all, before I do any list involving Canadians, guess what I got to put on? There we go. You got. If I'm the official representative, yes. I got to make it official. So
you absolutely are.
But I can't read with these on. So anyways, I made a little list here. What I did was to make it easier for me, I took out the guys who are currently working because their time will come. There are guys that should be on that list, but let them finish their careers before they get their faces carved on the mountain. But obviously, I think number 1 for me, Bret Hart. I think that's a no-brainer for any Canadian. Bret Hart, from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Number 2, Roddy Piper. Because, without Roddy Piper, the Hulkamania era does not happen. Because, as we always say, a good protagonist needs a good antagonist. And Roddy Piper was the best antagonist at that time, if not ever. Right. So he's there. One that's going to surprise a lot of people, Gene Kiniski. People, a lot may not be familiar with, but he was a big star. He was AWA champion. He was a big time, personality, especially here in Maple Leaf Wrestling territory, where I was with the Tunnies. He was a huge star in Canada for sure. And I will agree, Owen Hart, I know posthumously on that list, but wow, if he'd had more time, I hate to put it this way, and I hope it doesn't sound disrespectful, but if he had more time, maybe he would have been number 1 on that list. He was that damn good.
Yeah. I've always heard someone mention, I can't remember who brought this up originally, but if you look at who was coming into the WWE kind of right after that and the people he would have gotten to work with and the kind of matches he probably could have had, do you think Piper's a really good one? Do you think Piper doesn't get mentioned in these lists very often because he was billed from Scotland?
I think it's because a lot of people didn't know he was Canadian.
Yeah.
They probably thought he was from Portland or something.
Well, and his character, he wore the kilt and everything else. Like he didn't really. So do you think that's probably why he doesn't get mentioned as often in these kind of things?
If you're talking about a Canadian list, and I think he gets underlooked a lot of times as one of the greatest heels of all time because he had such a great turn and became such a great babyface at the end there. So I think that's another reason why he gets overlooked. But Piper is one of my favorites of all time.
I'm a little frustrated you missed this guy, Lance Storm, who is the greatest Canadian wrestler, and that's saying something.
He can be on your Mount Rushmore, Jack.
He's the 4 faces on my Mount Rushmore.
You know what's fun? I love and I hate the Mount Rushmore conversations because I feel like a lot of people getting confused in terms of they think it's like the top 4 of all time. And I don't think so. Like, you look at the Mount Rushmore and what those presidents represent. Those aren't the 4, like those kind of like the founding fathers, right? That's why I would have like a Stu Hart on it, a Bret Hart.
Yeah.
I'd have sorry to break Jimmy's rule, but I'd have Chris Jericho on it. But I'd have somebody that kind of represents that French Canadian. I can't really think of anyone else aside from like Mad
Dog Vachon.
I wish I could, but I wasn't really too familiar with him as much as Jacques Rougeau. I think Jacques Rougeau is one of those hidden gems in terms of first off, one of the best theme songs.
I'm the Mountie.
But I was going to say, even before that, I was a big Fabulous Rougeau Brothers theme song. I think that was one of the classics. Yeah, they were great. Him as the Mountie, him as a tag team wrestler with the Quebecers.
Nelly Belly, you beat me to it. I was going to say my Mount Rushmore of Canadian wrestlers are going to be Lance Storm, Elix Skipper, Jim Duggan, and Mike Awesome from Team Canada.
No love for Major Guns?
I was gonna say, I literally, I love that you said that. I literally on the side now was Googling, did Major Guns change her name when she went to Team Canada? I couldn't remember if she did one of those things where she was, because they changed names when they joined.
Pat Patterson,
Trish Stratus.
Watson, Trish Stratus.
Oh, Trish would be a good one.
How could I mention? How could I not mention a great Canadian with this name, John Tolos, the Golden Greek?
Yes. Oh well, yeah. Really, how can you not mention it? Let us know in the chat and in the comments who you think goes on your Canadian Mount Rushmore. I don't know. I think we have some good ones here. This is gonna be a tough. I think this question is going to show everyone's age based on who they pick. By the way,
one more I'm going to throw out there for people who don't know that he's Canadian, possibly, is Abdullah the Butcher.
He's Canadian?
Ooh.
Yes.
I didn't know he was Canadian. Like I knew Ivan Koloff wasn't Russian. So that was one thing I learned like a few years ago. But I knew Abdullah wasn't from the Sudan, but I didn't know he was Canadian.
Yes, he's Canadian.
Laura Rock mentioning Rick Martel, my buddy.
Oh, the model.
Yeah,
he was up there. It was between him and Jacques Rougeau for me.
Yeah.
I have a buddy. Whenever our fantasy football teams play against each other, the loser has to buy the other one a shirt. We don't know what the other person's going to get us, and he got me a shirt with just a big picture of Rick Martel on the front of it. It's great. It's totally a knockoff, but I love it. It looks awesome.
I'm still waiting for my bottle of arrogance to come to my house.
It's very arrogant for you to assume that's going to ever show up.
Kind of like my check from Stanford. It's still waiting.
Yes, well, you might get it after tonight. I have a feeling. Fernando says Bret Hart, Jericho, Owen Hart, Kenny Omega.